Sometimes you hear stories about legendary texts, things lost to history. But what if one of them was real? We're talking about a manuscript that supposedly weaves together mythology, literature, and a political critique so explosive it had to be buried. Today, we're going to dig into a story that might just change everything you thought you knew about one of literature's greatest legends.
So, what if Goethe's Faust, the ultimate deal with the devil story, what if it had a secret, dangerous sequel? One written in, get this, the language of angels. Well, that's the whole idea behind this supposed lost manuscript called Der Himmelsstürmer, which translates to the Himmelsstürmer. It's a work that takes the whole Faustian legend we know and just launches it into the cosmos.
All right, so let's get into the secret origin of this thing. The whole legend of this manuscript starts in this alternate version of the 1800s, a kind of dark Prussia, where the empire's power was totally absolute. The story goes that its author, and some people whisper it was actually Goethe himself, was so afraid of the state censors that he buried the text. Just let it sleep in secret for decades.
Okay, to really get why this manuscript is such a big deal, you gotta know the history. First, way back in 1587, you have the Faust book. It's a pretty straightforward cautionary tale. You make a deal with the devil, you get damned. End of story. But then, of course, Goethe comes along with his masterpiece, and he totally reframes Faust's ambition as this noble kind of striving. Well, the Himmelsstürmer, which was supposedly found in 1892, slots right in between them. It's like the missing link between these two totally different worlds.
So what makes this text so powerful? Well, it's basically this incredible mashup of three really potent stories. First, it pulls from the ancient Book of Enoch, the one with apocalyptic prophecies and rebellious angels. Then it mixes in that dark, you're gonna be damned vibe from the original Faust book. And it wraps the whole thing up in the grand, philosophical structure of Goethe's Faust. It's a wild combination.
But here's maybe the biggest twist of all, the most important change. This is not the story of the tormented scholar Dr. Faustus that we all know. No, the hero of the Himmelsstürmer is a much, much older and way more righteous figure, the biblical prophet Enoch.
And right there, you see the huge shift in motivation. The classic Faust, right? He's all about selfish desires, sure, knowledge, but also power, youth, pleasure, you name it. Enoch is the complete opposite. He's this righteous intellectual, and his motivation is 100% altruistic. He sees a massive disaster coming for humanity, and he's convinced that the only way to stop it is by getting his hands on forbidden, celestial knowledge.
There's this one line that just captures his whole deal perfectly. He sought not worldly pleasure, but the keys to the stars. See? Enoch's pact has nothing to do with personal gain. It's all about unlocking the secrets of the universe to save a world that has no idea it's even in danger. It's this incredibly noble goal, but he's going about it in a really dangerous, forbidden way.
Okay, so when you look at the structure of the manuscript, the first part is basically a direct mirror of Goethe's Faust Part 1. But, and this is a big but, the stakes are just cosmically higher. We're not just talking about one guy's soul anymore. Here, it's the fate of all humanity on the line. Just look at how it's laid out. It kicks off with a wager in heaven. Sound familiar? Just like Goethe's version. But it's not God and Mephistopheles. This time, it's the Archangel Michael making a bet with a fallen angel named Samyaza. Then you've got the pact, which is totally driven by Enoch's desperation. And finally, you get the personal tragedy. But instead of Faust's lover, Gretchen, the tragedy here is a fall of mortal women to these fallen angels, a total catastrophe that happens because of Enoch's hunt for knowledge. So if Part 1 was this intense, personal, and spiritual tragedy, Part 2 just explodes. It becomes this massive, sweeping political allegory, which is actually a lot like what Goethe did in the second part of Faust. The focus shifts from one man's soul to the fate of entire empires.
And right at the center of this whole allegory are the Nephilim. Now, in biblical lore, these are the monstrous giant kids of angels and humans, but in this manuscript, they're empire builders. They forge this incredibly powerful civilization that's threatening to just swallow the entire ancient world whole.
Now, where did they get all this power? Well, it comes straight from that forbidden knowledge Enoch was looking for, those keys to the stars. The fallen angels teach the Nephilim all this advanced stuff, like metallurgy and sorcery. It's like a dark industrial revolution that's fueling their whole imperial machine.
And right here, this is the secret. This is why the text was supposedly buried. The Himmelsstürmer isn't just some biblical fantasy story. It's a razor-sharp critique of the author's own world. The Nephilim giants? They're an allegory for the corrupt imperial elite in this dark Prussia. Their forbidden tech?
That's the state's industrial and military power. And their whole mission to dominate the world? Well, that's a direct shot at the empire's unchecked ambition.
So that leads us to the big question, right? Why on earth would this text be so dangerous, so threatening that it had to be locked away in the secret state archives? What was so scary about this story?
Because the allegory was impossible to miss. It was basically saying that the ruling class, the people in charge, weren't some divinely chosen leaders. No, it was painting them as monstrous, arrogant beings whose constant hunger for more power, their striving, was going to lead to a global catastrophe, the Great Flood. I mean, that's not just a critique, that's a radical, revolutionary attack on power itself.
But the manuscript saves its most profound and honestly its most shocking idea for the very end. It takes everything we think we know about the Faustian bargain and just flips it completely on its head.
The text basically introduces this idea we can call the Faustian shift. Remember the original Faust book? It was super clear. Go after forbidden stuff, and you're damned. Simple. But the Himmelsstürmer leans hard into Goethe's more modern idea, that this relentless striving, this unquenchable thirst for knowledge and power, isn't actually a sin, it's the engine of evolution. And so you get to the climax of the story, and Enoch isn't dragged down to hell. His storming of the heavens, his ultimate reach, it doesn't end in damnation, it ends in transformation. He ascends, and he becomes Metatron, the celestial scribe, the voice of God himself, an angel who was once a man.
I mean, this is the ultimate mind-blowing conclusion to the Faustian idea. The hero isn't saved in spite of his ambition, he becomes a divine being because of it. In this version of the story, humanity's constant reaching for the stars isn't a flaw that needs to be punished. It's the very thing that triggers our own divine evolution.
And that leaves us with the manuscript's final big question. A question for all of us, really. Is our own relentless striving for knowledge, our ambition to reach for the stars, is it a path to total disaster, like it was for the Nephilim? Or is it more like Enoch's journey, the final necessary step in our own evolution? The crazy thing about the Himmelsstürmer is that it suggests the answer might just be both.